Hi everyone. With this one, I wanted to show you guys a quick way to start with a base texture and to create maybe an entrance or a doorway for a dungeon. And this piece right here is going to have all of the information that I need from it to start. And I'm going to have columns for my door entrance. I'm going to have some metal here, and I'm going to have a lock that I'm going to use. Now, again, this is the process that I'm looking for you guys to be able to use. Is I want you to have this very much based on textures. I don't want you to go in the path of having really high-res geometries to deal with. Let the textures define how your models come out. So here is a concrete material that I got off of textures.com. And what I'm going to end up doing here is just going into another layer. And I'm going to make a marquee selection. And I'm just going to say maybe it's... let's go about this large. So we'll go about yeah, let's say it's about a quarter of half of the space here. So if that's not working, you can always drag out across and try to get that to snap. So I got my rulers and just drag until it snaps. And now we got that right here. And this is what I'm going to use for my space. That's going to be all of the concrete around an entranceway. And I'm looking at right now like mausoleum entrances. There's a lot of different ways of doing that, but what I'm trying to do is represent concrete that would have an angle coming outwards, and it would be made of concrete, obviously, and have some sort of metal there. So while I'm doing this, I want you guys to be aware of, and I bring up this guy a lot, Ben Mathis. This guy, he offers so much amazing stuff, and again, personal hero of mine when I was a student. This tutorial is awesome. It talks about the rule of thirds when you're making repeating textures, and essentially how this part right here can duplicate over and over and over again. This part is your top texture, and this is your bottom texture. So by having all this in one texture sheet, you can repeat number 2 over and over and over again, and then cap that off with 1 and 3. So very, very important way to be able to work with this. The red area, as he states here, it needs to be fairly generic, and yes, that's totally true for this part. So I'm going to follow along with that concept, and I'll share this in the description here. But while I'm doing this, again, I'm trying to make this stylized, and I want to make this as interesting as we can make this. So I'm going to make the, let's say, bottom part and the top part after I come out with a definition of what I want this to be. So with this selection here, I'm going to go ahead and do a edit fill. And I know it's going to make this solid, but if I end up dropping down the fill, it's going to disappear, but it's still going to allow for me to do things like bevel and emboss. So that's kind of a cool thing where I can actually have my actual color gone, but the fill is allowing me to really do a lot with this. So the color is totally not what I want, and I'm just kind of talking as I go. So that's going to be okay. I think this is a better color that I want to work with, or a better process, which is inner shadow. And what I'm going to go with here is, again, not 100% black, but a off color sampling off of maybe what I have here. And so we'll go dark blue. With this, I want to have my distance and choke and size. I want the size to be up pretty high, and distance down. There we go. And what I'm trying to do here is make it so it looks round. If I hit OK on this, and now if I hit Control T and scale that, I can't do anything with this. You'll notice that even if I scale it, it's not allowing me to work with this the way I want to. It's constantly confining it within this space. But if I took this whole thing, right click, hit duplicate, and I'm going to hide that layer. This one, if I end up taking this and I'm going to rasterize the layer style. If I hit Control T, now if I hold down Shift, I can scale. what I'm doing is making it so I now got rid of that bottom and top for the inner shadow. So I just have a really, really large space where tops and bottoms are light and this part is dark. And that's really helpful for me because I can have a repeating texture based off of this. So that's a thing to be aware of, is how we can kind of cheat to get our effects to work for us. Now, since I do want the bottom part to represent the bottom edge of my model, I don't feel that it's a good idea for me to go that far up. So I'm going to end up taking and pulling from here and then going down a little bit more, maybe pulling from there again. Okay. So I've got something like this. Drop that down a little bit more so I still have that bottom a little bit higher up. With this, that's going to give us the start of a texture. I'm going to try a color overlay. I'm not a huge fan of how that blue's turning out. So I'm going to go with a dark brown, green. There we go. Green, yellow, brown. And, okay. I can start to imagine how this could be a column or the outside part of a doorway. What I need to do now is start to think about how I can use this to represent our top and bottom part and get some other additional details in there. I kind of want some harder edges in my final piece here. I kind of want this to come out from the dead center, so I'm going to take that same layer that I was working with again. I'm going to turn off my inner shadow. Just go into here, turn off inner shadow. And I want something like bevel and emboss, and I don't want that to be smooth, but something like chisel hard. Now I'm going to change my colors this time. So I want my highlight to be a light cream maybe, and this should be like a dark brown. And so again, this isn't exactly working because I see the tops and the bottoms, and also my lighting isn't really coming from a side that I think I could work with. So I'm going to move that up to the top. Again, I can change my depth. I can change the size on this. So I'm actually going to increase the size of this to maybe something like this. And then now that I have something like this, I'm going to right click, rasterize my layer style. So by doing this, if I hit Control T and I end up scaling this up and move that down, scale it up some more, move that down. And just a little bit more. Now I have this hard angle. And I also have that shadow that's helping me to push that even further. So this is an easy cheat on being able to get something that looks three-dimensional, but really I just moved around the way my layers were being affected by that my effects. So I scaled those beyond where they're normally seen. Now that I have something like this, maybe I need to duplicate this layer to push that. I think that's really intense. Probably don't need to go that high, so we can go down a little bit lower than that. And now we need to think about those rules of thirds. So if this is coming up, this part right here, if that's my rule of thirds and I want to be able to repeat that, then I should make sure that nothing in here is too obvious that it's going to repeat. And that's kind of an important thing to do. And that's something that we can think about now with our bottom part on how we want to define that, and our top part. And then this middle section, we'll go back to that and repeat some areas to make sure that it actually looks pretty good. So this is where in our texturing class I referred to grunge painting. And that is just adding a little bit of some scratches and dust and all that stuff on our model. I always like to work on like a multiply on that or something of that nature. Scaling this down. Okay, and then I'm just going across, and I don't want my flow to be that high, so I'm going to drop that down. And right now I'm just using my mouse. Obviously this looks a lot better when you're not, but I just didn't have this set up at the moment. So I'm just cleaning or going around some edges and messing this up. That doesn't look good, but I know that if I use some blur on some of these areas and smudging, I can kind of start to push the fact that this is maybe like in the dirt or got some scratches on it. So if we zoom out, let's look at what that's doing. Obviously the contrast on this is too high. Reduce our opacity on this. Okay. Now that I have that, let's go to the top part. The top part maybe has an area that we can use for I don't know, a little bevel or something on the inside, and that's gonna like give cracks or something to that. So let's try that. I'm gonna go into another layer, and so that was my grunge. We'll use this one right here as I'm gonna use fill, go across the top here, and I'm gonna put a bevel on it. So I'm gonna take this and do edit, fill, and now I'm gonna take that and again turn the fill all the way down, but turn on my effects as a bevel and emboss. We need to zoom in on that to be able to see what it's doing. I'm gonna go back into there. I want this to be on the dead center of this, and I also want it so the size is maybe something like that, and my depth. Okay, so I'm just pushing that a little bit more. Now if I turn off my selection on that, I can see if Maya unfreezes. There we go. That's what I'm kind of given as my result. I'm going to reduce the opacity of this now too, so just kind of knock that back a little bit. Okay, so now that I have this. Looking at this now, my grunge, I should probably push a little bit more definition on that. Okay, and we'll say that this is something like this that we could work with. My middle section is where I want that to repeat. So if I take all this other stuff, let's say from here to here, group this, duplicate that group. Okay. Now I'm going to merge this group. Now I have this as a texture. I'm going to take this middle section and I'm going to just kind of eyeball it here. I'm going to say from about here to here. Basically anywhere before that that crack starts to happen. That's what I want as my repeating. So other ways we can do this too. I know we can do this mathematically with guides and rulers. I'm so lazy. I'm going to say 1/3 of 1024. I'm sure somebody just did that in their head. I don't. So 1024 divided by 3 is 341.333. So we're going to say it's 341. So let's make a 341 by 341. Okay. Now that I have that, Control A, Control C, Control V. Okay. I was working on a 512 texture. So that's going to be something different. Let's go again. Calc 512 divided by 3 equals 1071. So if we change this image size, that can't be 1071. It's 171. Okay. So we're going to tell that now 171 by 171 and hit OK. Control A, Control C, Control V. There we go. So that's about where this is going to be. And I'm going to move that over to that side here. And this is my area that I need to make sure that I'm going to have repeat. So what I'm going to do is select that area, hide it, copy what's underneath it, and paste. And what we can do with this is, what if I took this whole thing right here, edit, transform, flip my vertical. So now that I have it flipped, if I turn that off, that's what my seam is going to be. As I zoom out, I actually can't see the seam. If I get close enough, I can, but that's actually really good. I'm going to leave that alone. I think that this is going to repeat pretty well. I'm actually going to say this will work for my door, for the frame, for concrete. I'm going to move on to metal. So with metal, I'm going to make a new layer. So I don't even need to have any of this stuff, by the way. So I'm going to delete this out. These were all things I used just to start testing if this would work. I'm going to leave that as a template for 1/3 for me. All right, metal. Metal's an easy thing to do. I'm just going to go straight from top to middle, right to there. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and create a fill. So edit, fill, foreground color, okay. Doesn't matter what it's going to be because I'm going to change that. I'm going to go into my color overlay and I'm going to change that to, this time it's okay to have something like that. So something maybe like this blue-gray. I'm going to go into my, let's go pattern overlay. And what I want with pattern overlay, I want that to be pretty bright. So I want to increase the opacity on this. I want this to look like kind of rusted bars. Now that I have this, I can go ahead and add my, let's say we can add a gradient. And with a gradient, I'm going to set this as, in my basics, yeah, we'll do something like this. And I want it to be, yeah, set to multiply. But I want to define this so there's a middle and I have a side. So it's going to be something more like this. So I'll hit OK. The angle I want this to be at is like this. My scale, I want it to be right in the middle. And let's see, there we go. So now we have both sides. I'm just going to adjust that. And I've got this set as multiply. Let's see if we can change this so it's a little bit more pronounced. So I'm going to go through these to see if I can get something to show up. Now lighten gives me that bar. It may hit you like, oh, there you go. It doesn't work. This actually works out, I think. Overlay or soft light. So soft light is giving me a really nice look to that. If I turn this on and off, you can see that difference right there. That's great. So this could work for bars. Now, this can repeat over and over and over again, and I have some more space over here. What I want to have right here is maybe a lock that I could use that would work with this. And so what I'm going to do is actually create the shape of that lock right here. And there's all sorts of ways that we can make this work. I'm going to just go ahead and use my shape that I got right here, and then just start to modify that just a little bit. So it's not really a generic round shape. I'm trying to go for a little lock face shape on this. So okay, I've got something like this. Just scale this one up a little bit more. All right, this needs to have obviously fill on it. So I need a color. I don't need a stroke around the outside. There we go. And now right click, copy layer style from our bars, paste that on this one. Oh ho ho! You now have two of these. Now, why does it look a little bit different? Well, we used a different color to start with for our model. So with this color overlay versus that color overlay, they're kind of coming through a little differently. If I turn all of this off, you'll notice there's the cream color there, and there's the brown color. Easy way to fix that. If you want, I kind of like my the lock face I'm going to do versus that one. So I can just go ahead and I can take that one, and I'm just going to fill this this shape with that cream color. Now if I turn my effects back on, they match. Okay, I've got the shape. It looks a lot like that one, and I can do a couple little things to make this even better. I can go ahead and do let's do a bevel and emboss. Oops, I'm on the wrong one. And size. Reduce that down. And I'm going to change this time my shadow mode. Make it a little bit less as intense. And hit OK. And now I'm going to duplicate this. Control T. Scale it down. While I scale it, I'll hold down the Alt key so it'll scale from the center. And move it to here. Hit enter. And now let's turn off the effects that we're currently using. And let's give it a color overlay. And black makes sense to me. Bevel and emboss. Outer bevel this time. And we're going to reduce the size of that. I want to make sure that my screen is what's catching this time, not my highlight is catching, and I'm not really able to get that to give me what I'm looking for. So I'm gonna actually make my highlight from the shadow. So highlight is because it's using screen. It's not doing anything for me right now, but I know shadow is absolutely working for me. So what I can do is turn shadow to screen mode now, and I can change that color to a highlight, and I can reduce the opacity of it a little bit. So it's catching on the edge there. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I also want an inner shadow in here. Now I don't want that to be gigantic. I just want it to look a little bit like there's an edge around it. It may not even be very visible on your machines right now, but I can see that that's working pretty well. Okay, so I've got one of these. I'm going to duplicate that again. Control T and rotate that and move this down. Control T. And holding down Shift and Alt, I'm going to scale that in. Now I have both of these, and they're both giving me these effects at the same time. What happens if I grab both of these and merge? Aha! It took both of the shapes, merged them together, and it applied that same effect. It's a very, very helpful way to get this to work. I'm ready to start to work with this. Now, I have a lot of wasted space in here, and I can add that by giving different bars and some other stuff on that. But I want you guys to see this model. You kind of get the gist of this. With this, I'm going to go to save on my computer. And I'm going to change that to PNG. And we will call this Dungeon Door. Or Dungeon Gate. And we'll give that a long time to open. Okay, there we go. All right, let's go ahead and start shaping out some stuff. So I always like to work with a cube. Now, I've gotten really messy in this, trying to knock out as many videos for you guys as possible these past couple days. I know. Excuses, right? Everyone's got really crappy excuses right now. But it's, I apologize. I'm going to use this thing right here, and I'm going to use my multi-cut tool, and I'm just going to go straight across this top. Now, I'm going to cut this way. Now, I could have made that the same way. I'm just so used to working this way. It's a lot faster for me to think this way, so I don't care. I'm going to go and delete all of my edges. So the hard edges on this, I'm going to hit Control Delete, and now I have something like this. Now, actually, let's get, so we only have those two gone. Where's my front? There we go. We're going to get rid of this one and that one. Control Delete. All right, that's what I want. So I have this thing. Not pretty. It's just this thing. I can take this with my vertices, knock it back a little bit. Let's take that. And let's say that this is going to be a gate. I'm going to take this and duplicate. I'm going to bring this over to here. And now, let's take these two, mesh, combine. And what I want is delete that, delete that. What I can do is bridge this. So if I were to take my, okay, so if I take just the tops on both of these, and then I did a bridge, if I gave more divisions to this, and I also messed around with things like taper, twist, no, let's do an offset. Whoop. There we go. So let me back that up because I glitched that out a little bit. Let's go back to bridge. Let's go bend or blend or curve. We're going to do curve. And let's do divisions. We'll give some more to that. And let's leave those alone. We're going to increase. I don't know why blend is the only one that wants to work right now. Let's go ahead and do that one more time. So blend, bridge offset. There we go. So I have my divisions and they're giving me this. That's pretty awesome. I don't really have to do too much to get this dungeon to have a nice twist on that. Now, is it going to look the way I need it to? Maybe. Let's see if we can make this all work for us. I'm going to take all this and do mesh display, soften edge. And then I'm going to grab the edges that I know that I want to have as, we call these hold edges, but they're not going to be like that because we're not actually beveling or anything. We're actually just going to take these and do mesh display harden. Okay. That's kind of what I was going for the entrance. Now, is it scary? No. But I think I can work with this. I'm going to go ahead and work with a texture in here and see what I can do with it. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. And this is going to be my dungeon entrance. And that should be MAT for me because that's materials. I want to make sure I always have MAT there. And then for color, let's open up the color. And that is going to be Dungeon Gate, I guess is what I was calling that. Okay. Let me add that to here. Wow. That's disgusting. How do we fix this? Well, let's look at our UVs. I've got some fun stuff happening here. This is not the scariest thing I've seen. It's actually pretty easy to be able to take apart what we're working on. First thing is always eliminate the clutter. If you know you never see the bottom of this, get it out of here. There's some polygons that are gone. This and this, we're never going to look at them. Get them out of here. Now we have this part. Now that we have this, let's see if we can get this thing to fit for UVs. Oh, you know what? When I worked on this, since I was working with polygons the whole time, is this all the polygons? Yes. So sometimes by working with a default shape and then applying some modifiers to it, you can actually get this to lay out easier than having to spend all that time modeling something out and then realizing, oh, the UVs were all over the place. What I'm going to first do here is take my UVs and I'm going to take those and just move them over to the side. And I'm going to take, I don't know, I think these are all the top parts, which I'm going to ignore those for now. This part, I'm going to move to maybe here. And this part, I'm going to move to about here. And this part to there. Now, this is what I wanted to see if it would work. It looks like it's not exactly laying out how I wanted it to be. Of course, what I thought always blows up, right? So, how do we get this to actually unwrap in a nice way? We're just going to go into our UVs, and I'm going to go into an, let's actually go camera-based. So let's make sure that we are in panels, orthographic front. And now if I take this UVs, camera based, I have that arc. Now this is where we can easily get this to line up and repeat. You do it in a couple different ways, but for me, again, I'm kind of lazy and I know what will work fastest for me. I'm going to take this whole thing and just straighten it out, so to speak. So just like Egon did in Ghostbusters 2 when he talked about as a kid and he had a slinky, and the first thing he did with it was to flatten it out. So I'm going to take this and just bring all these over to that side. Now I'm not really concerned about stretching or anything like that right now because I know I could deal with that later on. I'm just trying to get these two all aligned. Now another thing to realize too, if this is the same and that's all going to be the same, we really don't even need to worry about doing half of this. We can mirror that over. So I've just eliminated half of my work for myself by doing this, by getting rid of that. Always trust that the tools that you're using are able to save your butt when you need them. Obviously we know too that Maya can crash and cause terrific pain for us, but in most cases Maya can save our butts pretty easily when we're doing some work by mirroring and doing all sorts of those things that computers are still a lot better at doing than humans are. So I'm going to take all these now, all my middle ones, move those over, and then bring those over to the center section, and then move this up, move that one up, move this one, yep, up, and then that one up. Okay, now let's just align these by scaling. Okay, and now I have this. I'm going to take this, scale it, bring it all the way over to that side. Take this one, do the same thing, scale it, bring it over to that side, and then bring this one in the middle. Now I know I have some atrocious things happening here, and I know that my UVs are crying. There's a lot of bad things going on here, but it is getting a lot better. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to work on that larger piece, and I want to make sure that it's not deforming as badly as it is. So I can do a couple different things to this. I can take a step back and see, is it looking bad when I zoom out? Is it stretching? I know the edges are stretching on the sides here, but this is the secret. Since I moved these other ones around, if I go to the UVs and I select all of that, I can just pull those out. And I can also do that with edge mode. So if I go here to there and then pull, okay, I've just unwrapped that. Same thing with over here. Go here to there and then pull. You've just unwrapped it without having to sit there and try and figure out how you're going to make that happen. Now that I have that, I can take this whole thing and scale that inwards more. And now we have our model showing up a little bit better. Now, I told you guys about how there's middles and there's ends and all that fun stuff. That's going to have to do with adding some additional cuts in our geometry. So if I know that my model can stretch a little bit more like that, and then certain pieces can repeat, I can have things layering on top of each other. So this piece theoretically can go up and up and up and up. The main thing I don't want to have happen, and I really want to avoid this, it's this part right here. I can see right inside of here I have got a lot of stretching going on, and it's just really really bad. So I need to figure out how I can get that little division on that spot. That's pretty easy to do for me. I know that this is going to start from the bottom to the top, and so that repetition is happening. I'm actually going to take all of, let's say, this, I'm going to do a split, and I'm going to move these down. Now I know I have that seam, so if I knew that if I went to around here, that should repeat, that seam should be a lot less visible since I was working that in with the rule of thirds. Now, not exactly the greatest example of that. That did save me a little bit. Right within this spot right here, I kind of want that transition to happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this one right here. Oh, that's not it. I need these. And I want these to be this section right here. So that's going to be kind of like this middle cut on the texture. Now, let's think about, was it keystone? I think that's what that's called. So if that's going to happen, it probably needs to be this one. If I move that up to here and I have that little bit of a line there, it's present on there, but it looks really bad. So what I'm going to end up doing is take the UVs, snap that down, and then take these and make sure that those are a little bit more like that. That's got that right there. I take this and mirror it. And turn off. My axis has to be X. And let me just tweak that here. Center my pivot here. Oh, that doesn't wanna. Where are you? Okay. And again, don't look at my outliner. Nothing is labeled. This is nightmare. I'm gonna move this to where it should be. Oh, that's why he wanted to join the party, but he's like in another state. So get that out of here. Okay. D. I'm gonna snap that right here, and now if I mirror that, turn off cut geometry. Object, there we go. Merge, no thanks. And now that I have that mirroring, you can see I've got that little bit of a detail on that spot. And we can do that with different spots here. So maybe this one did that too. So if I end up taking this, moving these up to that spot too, I should see a little bit of a little division there. We can do that with this one, bring that up too. And all that's doing for me is just giving certain spots to give some definition to this, so it doesn't just look like a boring, plain old, your average plain old dungeon, right? So, okay, I've got this going on. I can do a lot more work on this, and this is super basic. But I think that this is a good spot so we can kind of get an idea of where this is. I'm going to go ahead and do another polygon, and I'm going to create a gate. And to do that, again, I want to rotate this on a 45. And if I can type in no numbers, it should be more like that. Scaling this down, and I'm going to go ahead and go to UVs, or actually let's change our camera. And I'm going to do a UV camera based, because I want it to go straight through this thing. And I want to look at my UV editor now, because I want my dungeon entrance texture to be on there. And now that I have this, so that's my polygons that I'm working with. I want it to be this thing. If I go from top to bottom, so UVs, grab that, bring that up. Now if I scale this thing, so let me just get this so you can see it. Scale that up. I've got a highlight. So let me turn off my lighting so we can see this a little better. Flat lighting. You can see that highlight that's on that bar just to catch. Now it may not be enough, so all we have to do, if we're not really seeing that, and we know that we will have a highlight down the middle of this because it's supposed to be like a hard-edged wrought iron gate. We'll just go ahead and make another layer, and I'm going to just draw top down with the worst brush that apparently Photoshop has. Let's just go Legacy Soft Round. Okay, so we're gonna go scale this thing down, and then something like that. So I know that that's making a really pronounced spot on this. That's why we can do this as a overlay. Control S, and we will make that as a PNG. Save over that. Dungeon gate. Yes, yes, yes. And now there's that edge. So it's catching a lot better there. Okay. So now that I have this, let's scale it down and put it in position. This is sometimes where having grid on and working with this and then modifying the size is a good idea. So if I took this and I snap that to the grid here, duplicate, snap, duplicate, snap, duplicate, and snap, all of this should scale, and I know that it's a little bit bigger than where it needs to be, and that's okay. I'm actually going to increase the size of the thickness of this because I know that it's going to scale down a little bit for me. So I have this. I'm going to take one of these things, duplicate it. I'm going to freeze the transformations on it. Now I can get back to this, rotate it 90 or negative 90, and bring it over to here. I'm going to go in the front view and duplicate, duplicate. Okay. All right. Now let's just take all this mesh, combine, and we're going to put that somewhere in the center of this. Scale it down so you have more of it. And now that I have this thing, sorry, my cat just burst in the room, scaring me half to death. Move this, and then maybe we can play around with some scale. Now the important thing too is we need to realize that we can't really scale it in one direction because it's going to stretch out in across different axes. So if I duplicate this one and then just move that up, and now I have that nice little kind of centerpiece that's right there. It kind of just adds some details to it. Lots of different ways that you can make that happen, obviously. I'm going to take this one and separate. So mesh, separate. And I'm going to get rid of that one. And I'm going to go to all of this, mesh, combine, go to vertex mode, and move this down. Okay, now that I have this, what I'm going to do is just create the lock for it. And I've got a dungeon entrance. A couple little things I would add to it, and I'll do that as well. But let's add cylinder, and this cylinder needs to be pretty low poly because if I look at this, 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're gonna do 8. We're gonna go right there, 8. And I'm going to just go straight across the top of this thing. So panels, orthographic top. I need this to rotate, I think it's around 22.5 degrees. And I'm going to do UVs, camera based. And now I'm going to add that material again to it. So the dungeon material. Now that I have that material, I'm going to go to UVs, UV editor. Scale this thing down. You want it to only be about that big. So now that we have this, we're going to actually be working with this to shape it. So I have this. I'll be looking at that as a reference as I work with the UVs too. So I know that I want this to have this Let me freeze the transformations on this so it's a little bit easier to work with. So vertices, I want that to be more like that, and I want it to come down. And then same thing with this. I think that's okay, but these need to come down a little bit. This whole thing needs to be kind of shrunk. And then now that I have that, let's go ahead and do the same thing with this. I'm going to take these, push that down, kind of make it fit in there. Same thing with this right here, scale that in. Now I know it's not going 100% into the space. This is a super low poly model, and that is okay that I do have this going off of the area, because if we look at that, you can't really tell. Now that's super thick. We need to scale that down. We also need to make sure that none of these UVs are in the white space, because that's what's giving us a little edges on that. So we're going to go into there. It'll sample those edges better, and that's pretty nice. We can go better. Let's go ahead and take the front of this. So if I took all of this, what if I hit duplicate, or shift and scale? So I scaled it, and I know it doesn't look good yet, but if we took all these, don't freak out, because we can get this all back. We'll just do a UVs camera based. Again, take this whole thing and scale it back to where it needed to go. And with this middle section, looks a little bit weird. But I have another edge in there instead of a triangle. So what I can actually do is I can cut around some of these spots. Now, you might not want to have to do this to get this much detail in there, and I understand that. But I think some of you may be trying to get a little bit more pizzazz on there. So that's up to you. I also know this triangulation on it, that looks like garbage. So let's make this so it doesn't have triangles that come across the front. So I'm just going to clean this up by going across here and across there, grab all of this stuff, and then hit Control Delete. And we're also going to go multi-cut, click, 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 click. Okay. So that actually, I could start to cut into this if I wanted to give like a hole on that. I really don't think I need that since it's so low poly. So now that I have this, let me just move this where it needs to go. I'm going to make that 90 degrees here and bring it over here. And what we're going to do is put that on our model. Now this is pretty crude for a model. I did that on purpose because of the amount of time. I'm not modeling something out super complicated. I'm doing something that I think will get you the ideas and allow for us to talk about kind of the core stuff that's important. To eliminate the stretching on there, super easy thing to do again. UVs, UV editor. We can grab the edges on this. Scale that up. Now I know it wrecked everything there. So all we have to do, again, we're going to go to the UV shell, scale. Let's grab all these UVs, scale it down. Everything fits inside there now, but now we don't have that really, really bad stretching that was there. It still stretches, but it's not that straight through color on that. So this is, again, a way that we can make just a simple model that can go on our object. Again, if you feel that this isn't enough, the tricks of adding just a little bit of like some highlight that goes across here and there. These are just little additions that really can save this piece to look a lot more refined. So we're kind of juggling. We're going back and forth, adding certain details. But you'll notice, I mean, that was very fast, but kind of get the idea. It's a very easy way to add that stuff. So I'm going to take all this, mesh combine, and hey, for the first time, let's call this dungeon entrance or something like that. Let's turn on this stuff, and let's scale that down. I'm going to put it so it's got its piece there. Rotate it 180. Scale it some more. And let's bring this into our scene. And let's just keep going until we get it situated to where we want that to be. I think that's probably the best size right there for it. So I'm going to just move this so it's all the way into the geometries. I want it kind of seated in there. And a rule of thumb too is if these are non-functioning doors, I never merge the edge on that. So let me edit mesh, merge. Okay, if these aren't functional, they're just more decoration. We can take this and just that can go further back. Now don't do what I just did. We'll cut this off. We're just gonna grab all these and pull until they're in that piece. And yep, I've got a really bad dungeon where it's going into solid rock. I get it. That's not ideal. Again, if we were to choose where this goes, we can put it over a spot that has maybe like right here where I know that there is let's go there, face this one, that one, and let's just pull these back. And then we could easily cut a spot out, or even better, in here, this will be the last thing I'll show you. We'll add this. I'm just going to go ahead and create this really quick for you. Shift F5, there's that. Do a inner shadow. And I want this to be kind of around the edges, kind of like that. And my color overlay, maybe that. So that's good. I can put little eyeballs or whatever it is that I want in there. I can make it so there's like a forced perspective or something weird. But this is a way. Save. Let's say that we were having, did I not save it as a PNG? Yes, because I'm talking. Okay. There's that. I could just grab this, move it forward just a little bit, and add a plane that is gonna be 90 degrees. Let's go -90. And that's going to go inside of here. So just drag that over. Drag that up and in. And I'm going to grab my vertices. Vertices. If I say one more time, I think I'm going to screen. Okay, there we go. Object mode, bring it forward. And scale that a little bit more. Okay, let's add that material to it. So dungeon. And we're going to take that UV editor. Very, very simple thing that we can do. We're going to UV shell, scale it, and Now, if it's not pronounced enough, if it's too dark, we can always mess with the contrast. We want to make sure that this is kind of believable. I don't think that that's believable yet in how that would display. So Photoshop, go to another one of these. I got my brush tool, and that can be on like an overlay. And I can just do something like that where I've got a highlight there. I can even sample in my cave. So Control A, Control C. I'm going to put that right into that same space. So I will Control T, scale this thing down quite a bit so it's like something like that. And I'm going to mask that so it's smaller. And what if I did like an overlay or hard light or something like that, so I have some texture in there. Move that underneath that one. And Control S and File Save As. So I have thrown together a ton of in-depth tutorials on this. I know it's a lot of spastic stuff for you guys, but my goal is that you guys can see these things and understand exactly how to go about making these projects work for you. I don't want you doing a ton of high-res models and then realizing that you don't have any time to texture them. I want to see what you're able to do as a texture artist for this. So that's taking these pieces and really working up the geometries, or the working up the texture, so that way the geometries work in the favor of that. So there's a very easy cheesy doorway that does not take a long time to do. It took more time for me to talk, I think, and say yep than to produce this thing. I do a lot more of this to finish it up. But I think that this is something that is doable for all of you. And remember that if you get to a spot where you like something, but you still want to change it, that's something that can so easily be done. Just take things like this extrude, and we can just pull this out. And all of a sudden now, you got additional details that you spent 2 seconds doing. So, alright, that's it for this one. Hopefully you guys learned something.